get things started here. Do we have any bill introductions? Representative Ousley.
Thank you, Chairman Tarwater. I do have a bill introduction. It is RS 0250, creating the Taxpayer Empowerment, Accountability, and Transparency in State Contracting Act. This is extremely similar to the 2017 HB 2201.
Okay, thank you. Without objection, we'll go ahead and enter that bill. Any other bill introductions? Seeing none. Any online? Okay, we're going to move on then. Committee, we had to rush through the conferees for the bill that we're about to hear, and one of them that we left off was one that I felt was important to hear from because she represents the BioKansas industry or biotech industry, and she's with BioKansas and Sonya Hall. Dr. Hall, are you with us?
Yes, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity, Chairman Tarwater.
Yeah, you know, I apologize because she was on the list, and I didn't see her. I skipped over her, so that was pointed out to me immediately after the meeting last time, and I apologize for that, and I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. So as the chairman said, I am Sonya Hall. I'm a doctor of molecular, cellular, and developmental biology, that training for which I received through 2 degrees at the University of Kansas. I now serve as the president and CEO of BioKansas, which is a nonprofit bioscience-focused organization where we really aim to create a sustainable and growing bioscience ecosystem that spans the entire state of Kansas. Our industry and the investment in our industry results in really high-paying jobs within our state and great returns to our state economy. I don't want to reinforce many of the points that were made by the speakers at the last meeting, so I'll be brief. There are some few unique nuances that I think my comments related to the bioscience industry may be helpful in informing your discussion and next steps. And so that's what I'm prepared to share with you today. So for many early stage bioscience companies, it's a long road from discovery of an idea to moving a product into the marketplace or clinic. They often do this with a very small number of highly trained employees. These typically range at that angel investor stage of 1 to 3 employees. And before being able to hire additional staff and getting the investment that they need to grow their businesses, they have to be able to show proof of concept. So essentially, they need to demonstrate that their idea or their technology is able to be commercialized. Additionally, the expertise that they need is often very varied and broad. And that combined with the tight regulatory timelines that they face often results in them, rather than hiring within, contracting with contract research organizations and contract manufacturing organizations that you can find across our state. And so that still has an economic benefit to our state, but it wouldn't be reflected in the number of jobs that you see generated within the angel investment benefiting company itself, but you would rather see that somewhere else within our industry where that expertise is available. Additionally, the need to have really highly sophisticated equipment and access to assets that are very expensive reinforce this need for these companies to contract with organizations that already have that infrastructure within them. Therefore, they can maximize the investment dollars that have been made into their companies into growing that proof of concept stage to gain additional investment, grow, and then eventually hire the staff that they need. As Representative Owen spoke about during the last session, we have a very vibrant startup community. These companies spin directly out of our universities, and there's often not a lot of infrastructure readily available to them. And so the fact that Kansas has a really large wealth of contract research organizations and contract manufacturing organizations positions us really well to support these spin-out companies as they're growing and developing their technologies, really allowing our state to maximize the investment that we're making into them. Another point that was brought up during the last session as well was about the clawback. There was the move for 5 years for more of those tech-focused companies and keeping the 10 years for the bioscience companies. And it may seem surprising for our industry that we would be saying, yes, that 10-year requirement for bioscience companies, that higher burden, it is appropriate. And that's because it can take 10 years or more for us to get to the point that these companies are generating revenue or that they're prepared for their technology to either be licensed or sold. So the state benefits by holding the bioscience industry to that 10-year timeframe, whereas that's less realistic for the really fast-moving tech companies that you heard Ryan speak about with the KC Tech Council before, and Commerce as well spoke to that. One thing that I think is really important for everyone to be aware of is that the bioscience ecosystem and the growth of it within our state is highly dependent upon the success of these companies that we're spinning out at the startup stage from our universities. Within the state of Kansas, we are uniquely poised to become a hub of biomanufacturing and bioscience growth. When we think about the strengths and the assets that our state has, we have substantial manufacturing assets and a lot of workforce talent that is right now unemployed, that we can reskill and upskill in order to be able to work in these higher level advanced manufacturing settings within the biomanufacturing space. Additionally, the assets that we have in warehousing, logistics, and transport position us to be extremely competitive to grow assets in biomanufacturing that are in short supply across the entire world. And here in Kansas, because of our geographic location, we're also uniquely poised to be able to deliver those products to the end user in these tightly controlled time constraints as well. So by renewing the angel investor tax credit, we're not just investing in these companies, but we're positioning and poising these companies to be able to leverage all of the strengths and assets of our state to have a very large driving economic impact. And our organization is here to provide support to those companies and to any of our legislative leaders as you're navigating your decision-making process related to our industry or any of those adjacent industries. And so I'll close there, and I thank you all for your time, and I'm always happy to answer any questions you may have.
Committee, any questions? I'm not seeing any. Could you give me an idea of how many biotech companies start each year?
The number of biotech companies that start each year, that's a good question. That I'm not sure of. Within our state, I would say there's probably less than 100 formal companies that would develop, but they're often at different stages. So part of it is, I think the question is really how many ideas that we have that could be turned into companies. And so that's data that I don't have readily available, but David from the Department of Commerce may be able to provide that information more specifically. We probably support 20 to 30 new companies a year that come to us for resources.
Okay, and you mentioned several advantages that Kansas has for these types of companies. Do you think that, I'm trying to think of a way to put this, but will they start either way, or programs like this will bring more of them to town or to Manhattan?
Yeah, programs like this are really essential. Not only does it signal to the companies that that they have additional assets within the state that they can leverage, right, to draw attention to their company. If an investor is trying to decide on investing in, say, a company that is based in the Bay Area versus a company in Kansas, there's a lot of things stacked against them in the deck as far as resources and assets for their success. This is one of the few things that we have to leverage for these early stage companies, right, that that they can bring to the table when they're talking to these angel investors. When you get down the road where these companies are now growing and they're ready to begin manufacturing and distributing products to wherever the end users may be, whether it be a clinic or a retail location, that's where Kansas can really, really compete and I believe have a really competitive edge on the market. And so what we need to do is utilize this as a tool to strengthen those early, more risky steps for these companies to get them to the point that they're in that more growth phase.
Okay, and of all the company, you've helped several companies start. What percentage of them stay in Kansas versus move away from Kansas?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because of the long history of them, and I don't have a good handle on all of the numbers, but again, I think the Department of Commerce may be able to do that. What I can say is that I hear from a lot of these companies in Kansas that they want to stay here and that there's specific barriers that prevent them from being able to do so. One is access and availability of investment, and the second is having the adequate space and actual infrastructure to be able to support those initial growth steps that they need to take. So having, you know, a laboratory facility or a manufacturing facility where they can, one, afford it, and two, is equipped in the way that it needs to be compliant with the regulations. And so those are the things that typically force them out of Kansas, not the fact that they don't want to be here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Any further questions? Seeing none. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
David Stoffer, we requested some numbers the last time you were here when we heard this bill. Were you able to put those together for us?
Good afternoon, committee. David Sofer, Legislative and Policy Director at the Department of Commerce. So I did send an email out Tuesday evening at 6:17, but I'll kind of go over it right now, what I have. So what we were able to provide is we provided the last 3 years of 17, 18, 19, the total capital that was raised, the total annual payroll and the total revenue, and then kind of where it's been since the life of the program. So for the life of the program, the total capital raised was a little over $486 million. The total annual payroll for the life of the program, so this is from 2005 to 2019, so that's $231 million. And then total revenue was $366 million. Total jobs impacted was over 2,700. And then what we were also able to do, and we apologize, we've not been able to do a complete overview on this. We're only about 50% complete. But what we wanted to be able to do is look at all the companies in the history of the program and where are they right now. So we're about 50% of the way done. But currently in the state, the program employs actively, again, this is only a 50% review, but 766 employees for a total payroll of $64.5 million and an average salary of a little over $84,000.
And that number is for the total history of the program?
So the last three numbers I rolled, so the employees, the payroll, and the average salary is strictly for the last year, so 2019, for all the companies that we have on record that still exist, but that's only 50% complete as far as our review is concerned. So that's a baseline. The number may very well be higher. It definitely would not be lower.
Okay, so those numbers are for just this 1 year, but they're for all the companies that were in this program at one point.
That still exist, correct.
And then the previous numbers were for the last 5 years of the startups.
The previous numbers were for the life of the program. So if we wanted to just look at, let's say, 2019. So in 2019, from the companies that applied took part in Angels, total capital raised for that 1 year is $36.2 million. Total payroll is a little over $14 million. Total revenue is $10 million. That's just for a 1 year.
Any questions for Mr. Soffer? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you probably went over this. I was stepping in and out during testimony. So on this, can you just give us a rundown of, without saying the names of some of the businesses that have participated, what they produce, what they do?
Are you talking about like technology?
Technology, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a wide variety, right? So some businesses, as Sonya mentioned, are more biotech. So whether it be some type of medicinal focus, treatment, medicine, vaccine, any of the like. And then certainly on the other side, there's software related companies, tech. If, you're coming up with an app, a whole variety of different app ideas that we get, whether it be, kind of like I'm trying to think, for example, like a Uber for various agriculture needs, I think is one that came up. A lot of ideas are based on software or apps or any tech-based business that is a new idea that is just like copyrighted or the like.
Okay, and that's what I was trying to find out as I was Googling right now. The qualified business is a tech business. Yes. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Thanks for putting those numbers together. Okay, committee, we'll now take up HB 2045. And for a motion on the bill, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee recommend HB 2045 favorable for passage.
Is there a second? Representative Clayton. Okay, to start with, let's see if we can get a review of the bill from Charles. Charles, are you there? Reviser?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So just a quick review. The bill does a number of things. First of all, it fixes the definition of convertible note, which is part of the types of equities that can be invested as part of the program. So it makes a fix to that definition, a debt that becomes an equity. Secondly, it permits qualified Kansas businesses to offer less than 50% of the investment by an investor as a tax credit. Currently, the requirement is 50%. There is an increase in the amount of the tax credit limit on investors for each business that they invest in and also for each year. So those limitations are increased. It extends the sunset of the act to 2026. It increases the total amount of tax credits allowed each year under the program. It changes the tax clearance requirements for investors and for transfers from 3 years to that they not have any current tax liability. It broadens who may receive a tax credit transfer. And finally, it changes the clawback provisions for enforcement. And that's what the bill does.
Any questions for the reviser? Okay, seeing none, we'll open discussion. Representative Clayton.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have an amendment. I think you all should have this in your files, right?
Yes, it was emailed to everybody before the meeting.
So this amendment makes 3 technical fixes. It was brought by the Department of Commerce. The most important fix that it makes is on page 6 and lines 4 and 5. It protects the state Currently, the state is protected if the, if the company is guilty of fraud, but not the investor. And so this allows the state to claw back credit if the investor was an issue as well. And then we also have the two smaller fixes on page 2, just the more precise language to define the action. And page 3 just qualifies the term currently and, provides point in time to measure it by. So I'll stand for questions.
Do we have a second for the amendment? Representative Shu, thanks. Any questions on the amendment? Representative Williams. You all have a copy of the amendment so you can read it?
That was what I was going to ask, Chairman. Can we take a moment so we can locate the amendment in our emails? And
Is it the one that's labeled balloon amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we can take a minute. It is my understanding that these were requests from the Department of Commerce to clean up the bill. They wanted to make sure that it was legality. And Mr. Sofer, if you want to explain the amendment a little bit, I'll allow that.
David Sofer, Legislative Director, again for the Kansas Department of Commerce. Sorry, let me just quickly pull it up. So I'll start with the last one, just because that's probably the biggest one, the most important one of the 3 changes. Currently, if you look at the way the law is written, it says an angel investor who makes an investment in a qualified business shall be entitled to keep all of the tax credits claimed under this act. Apparently about 4 years ago, there was some look into this. There was a discrepancy. It turned out not to be an issue, but we were warned that the next time we look at changing this act, it might be worth amending this, because the way the law is written, it protects the investor to basically receive the tax credits no matter what. That doesn't really make a lot of sense from the state. Certainly if an investor acts, in good faith, and the company is the issue, then they should be entitled to keep those credits because they did make an investment if they aren't able to get their money back. But on the flip side, if the investor commits an action that is unlawful, the state should be able to claw back those credits and make sure that the state is made whole on this issue. So that is the biggest issue. On section 2D, so well, I'll start actually from the beginning. So the first one, so section 1, I2, it's precise wording to define the action. So that's why we put in any additional funds. And then section 2D, any investor without a current tax liability at the time of the investment in a qualified Kansas business. So this qualifies the term currently and provides a point in time to measure by. So this was recommended by our counsel on team. I'll be happy I think that is a good explanation, but if you need any further clarification, happy to.
Yeah, thanks for that. Has everybody had a chance to review the amendment, or anybody need more time? Is there any discussion on the amendment? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just trying to read through exactly how it would read on page 6, starting line 4. I think it says angel investors lawfully make an investment in a qualified Kansas business, not have tax credits disallowed solely due to the business losing its designation as a qualified Kansas business under this act. I'm not sure I'm able to read that correctly, but those are the words I see.
Correct. So what I had read to you was the way the statute was written. The amendment, so the way what you just read would be the change we are proposing. By wording it that way, we would qualify the investor. If for some reason the company did not act in good faith and the investor cannot be made whole, they can keep the tax credit. However, if the investor did not make a lawful investment, then certainly they would not be qualified to or entitled to keep those credits.
Representative Johnson, are you saying that the word shall should have stayed in there rather than be struck?
Correct. I was deeper in the weeds even in the meaning with just how it should read. Thank you.
Okay. Charles?
Yes, sir.
The word shall should be in there, right?
Yes.
Okay, before we make any kind of a substitute motion, is there any other discussion on this amendment? Okay, seeing none, would you care to make a substitute?
Yes, I would like to make a substitute motion to just add shall to that very last balloon on page 6, line 5.
Representative Shu, is that okay with the second? Yes.
Close.
Representative, you may close.
Move my amendment.
You've heard the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Anyone against, say no. Amendment passes. Is there any further discussion on the bill or questions on the bill? Representative Dodson.
Just had one question, and it may just be by convention, but maybe the reviser can answer. When you look at the fiscal note, I didn't know if it's allowed to take account on the revenue side for the production of the business itself. In other words, the expected revenue from salaries, the revenue from taxes on that side, because everything I think on the fiscal note shows negative. That is an outflow from the general fund.
Charles?
I would not be able to comment on the fiscal note that's prepared by the director of the budget, and I wouldn't have anything to offer on that.
Eddie, can you opine to that?
Not really beyond what Charles said. Our office doesn't prepare those either. The representative is correct that the fiscal note only captures the revenue lost to the tax credit and does not consider what might be the broader impacts of the policy. That's kind of just the way fiscal notes are prepared.
Yes, Representative. Unfortunately, sometimes these fiscal notes are incorrect is a best way to explain it.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none. Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee SH245 favorable for passage as amended.
Second. Representative Clayton. Committee, you've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. All against say no. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. That concludes our agenda for today. There's no meeting tomorrow. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. Thank you.